And now a new report shows that 15 people have died in the UK as a result of the illegal use of private e-scooters. 38% of people injured in a collision involving one were seriously injured. And of course, an investigation has started overnight after a teenage girl on an e-scooter died in London yesterday. Kent's Police and Crime Commissioner, Matthew Scott, he wants them all banned on safety grounds. Nick Freeman is a motoring lawyer. He's known as Mr. Loophole, and I spoke to him just a few minutes ago, and I asked him whether he's a fan of the e-scooter.
I am a fan of e-scooters. They certainly have a place, but they need their own designated area, safe from other traffic. Their design needs to be changed, and they need to be properly legislated for. We need to know at any one time by identification who is driving, and then we need a full raft of legal provisions to make each person accountable and responsible. But all those things, and then I think they're great because obviously they've got environmentally friendly credentials.
No, they absolutely have, and I don't think anyone's denying that. The problem is, and it's like many things, I'm thinking of bicycles for a start. It seems, looking at these findings, the majority are being tarred with the minority as these trials progress, and the focus has been on the bad users.
Well, they always ruin it. The difficulty with e-scooters is that there's the legal ones, the ones on these sort of pilot periods, are limited to 15.5 miles an hour outside London, whereas the private ones, which of course are completely illegal, can go up to about 70 miles an hour. And the people typically who use things illegally are happy to simply not comply with any legal provisions. They're on the pavements, they hit people. There's no accountability, and they really are dangerous. The roads are not in a good state. The wheels are too small. I think the wheels are about 12 inches. The design needs to be changed. And we also there needs to be compulsory use of helmets for all e-scooter riders. And what's interesting is their particular definition falls within the Road Traffic Act, which means that there is a mandatory requirement for all users to have helmets. And what the government did in May, June 2020 is they introduced a sort of sneak procedure, a statutory instrument through Parliament, whereby there was no debate and said you don't actually need to wear helmets for e-scooters, which to me is completely incompatible with road safety. Head injuries are so important and that they need to be preserved, and the government did it on the QT, and you have to wonder why. And the government have also recognised, I launched a petition some time ago, and the government, in response to that, recognised that there is some law in place, but it will be particularly difficult for people who use e-scooters to comply with legal provisions. So there needs to be specifically crafted legislation to deal with e-scooter users.
It's concerning as well that reading about children being transported on them without helmets. Now, I've got a 6-year-old. We were talking about my 6-year-old the other day because he managed to ride his bike for the first time without stabilisers. We wouldn't dream of putting a child on a bike these days without a helmet. So why do you think that people are putting them on these scooters?
Just a reckless disregard for safety. It's anyone with half a brain, and if you'll excuse the pun, would never dream of doing it because they're so dangerous. If they see the consequences of what happens, even with a slight head injury, they would just never do it. So there clearly needs to be education. There needs to be a strong campaign by the government, like they used to have with Clunk Click, wearing a seatbelt. We need to get the message home. And at the moment, all the government are doing is prioritising unleashing these things because of their environmentally friendly credentials, and that's such a priority that everything else, all the important road safety provisions, are falling by the wayside. There needs to be a carefully thought out approach where lots of people are consulted, and then it's launched in a proper, sensible manner so that safety is considered, where they ride is considered, the legal aspects are considered, and then it's got a reasonable chance of success. But, at the moment, somebody can hit a pedestrian at a vast speed on the pavement, they drive off, and you've no idea who it is. And they might be injured, or the pedestrian might be injured, So, and the statistics show it's getting worse and worse. And then, of course, you couple that with the new highway code, which prioritises users in terms of vulnerability. So the most vulnerable pedestrians have priority, but e-scooters are up there, way below cars. And so cars now have to be adept at noticing not only pedestrians and not only cyclists, but e-scooters as well. So they're watching out now for pedestrians who can step off the pavement at junctions in front of them. They have to stop. They've got to be aware of e-scooters on their offside, their near side. There's too much going on. It needs to be unravelled and regrouped.
One of the questions that I'm asking this morning is, do people feel safe as a pedestrian these days? And I'll wager that they don't.
I'm sure they don't. We see cycles on the road, on the pavements, which is illegal. Again, they're unaccountable. Until the government says anyone who uses a bicycle or an e-scooter must be identifiable at any one time, the pedestrians will never feel safe, because people are going to abuse the law. If you take registration plates off cars, how do you think people are going to drive? They're going to take risks, aren't they? Because they're not going to be caught. And so, people have to be made responsible, and then they'll be accountable. And it's not a complicated solution, but there seems to be a huge reluctance to go down that road.
That's the legal expert Nick Freeman, Mr. Loophole, as he's more commonly known, or colloquially called, I suppose. Nick Freeman talking to me just before the show started at 10 this morning. It's